Hey, welcome to Keight's Crafts. I'm Keight. Here's a fun little underwater inspired card I created using a heat gun, embossing powder, Copic coloring, ink blending, splatter, and lots of shimmery goodness. Let's get started. Here I have some Copic sketch markers in different shades of blue that I'm just going to make a big old scribbly mess all over my paper. There is a method to this madness, and you will see momentarily what I am aiming to do with all the variation colors of blue. My goal here is to create a form of underwater picture that I'm going to use to incorporate into today's card. So here I've cut out that piece of paper that I scribbled all over with a Sizzix Tim Holtz die. I'm not sure the name of it, but it does have a number on it, and it just says Sizzix 665211. I'm not sure if that's just the product number or what, but I didn't notice really any name on the packaging for this particular die. It's a really neat die, but it also is very thin in a lot of places, so you kind of got to be careful. And you end up having to run it through your die machine a couple of times to make sure that it cuts everything out. And I had this ingenious idea to just coat it all in Versamark ink and cover it in embossing powder. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm trying to use up what I can of this particular embossing powder by Recollections. I find that it does not cooperate well with my allergies, and I have to wear a mask. So now that I've got all that coated, and I am taking a heat gun and just going over to melt all the embossing powder on this intricate die. I find that I'll have to put my heat gun down after I've completed this and let it cool off some because it gets too hot, and once it gets too hot, my heat gun does not want to work. So once I've got all that done, you can kind of see how it gives it a watery effect, even more so with that glossy look to it. I just really liked how this turned out, and I'll end up doing this again later. So for the front of my card, I decided that I was going to put a couple of little mermaids on top, and here I've got some V colors to color in the hair of the one girl, and I'll go in with some other colors as well. If you want to skip this part, that's fine. However, this is the first time I've colored on Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound cardstock. A crafty friend of mine had mentioned it to me, and I had not yet tried it out. And she was very kind to send me a few sheets of her stock with some stamped out images. Now, this is probably the fourth time I've tried to color on it. The first few times it was quite a learning curve and not what I'm used to. So I really appreciate her sending me this for me to try out. I would like to continue trying out more coloring on it as I'm still kind of getting a feel for it, but it definitely handles different from the Recollections Shimmer white gold paper that I have quite a bit of that I'm used to coloring on. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it. I'm still learning a lot about all of this stuff, as I've said before in previous videos. I am very new to this. I only started this card quest back in September, and I've only started recently showing my work publicly on YouTube back in February. So this is all new. I know I keep saying it, but it really is. So if you happen to watch one of my videos and have any tips or suggestions or things that I might not have tried yet, do let me know. I do appreciate the feedback, constructive criticism or whatever, as long as you keep it polite and are cordial, especially to other viewers as well, of course. So in light of trying to keep this video from being over 20 minutes long, I will show you the rest of me coloring her hair, and then I will skip to the other bits of the video because coloring, as much as I enjoy it, can take up a good chunk of viewing time, and not everybody enjoys watching somebody else color. So as always with my coloring, I am going from light to dark as I have with the other two mermaids that I've done, and that's general practice of how I color with all my Copic coloring. This also would have been really neat in colored pencil, as this paper is very, very smooth, and the finish of it is quite different from what I'm used to. Even the way the marker moves around on the paper is different, and it makes me want to buy other types of paper to try. So here, like I said before, I'm going back in with the Versamark ink, and I'm going to go over top of the embossing powder that I heat set already, and I'm going to do another layer of it. I find I wanted to give it just a little bit more stability with the heat embossing powder. I find that the dimension of it was really neat. So I'm going to go over that with the heat gun again and just get it all melted and lovely. And now I'm just going to bend it back because it kind of warped a little bit. And I find the Swiffer cloth really comes in handy for mopping up that stuff. So here I've got some Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to make the background of this. This is like a light blue colored paper. It's probably a 65-pound cardstock, I believe, that I have in my stash. So I'm just going in with Mermaid Lagoon, some Salty Ocean, and some Chipped Sapphire. And I'm not being very proper with this ink blending. I know my Chipped Sapphire is a little bit dry. You'll see once I get into it, and I do have a re-inker coming in this week for it, as it's a very nice blue. I rather like it. So once I'm happy with all those blues, I'm going to go in and try out this darker blue to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. And here's the fun part, the splatter bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of water on a stamping block with a thin paintbrush and kind of sprinkle it all over my mess of ink. And then I'll take a paper towel and kind of lift up some of that water to get the lighter bubbly spots. And here I've got some Dylusions shimmer spray, and I believe that is in a vibrant turquoise. And I'm just going to splatter that little bit there. And here I have the Dylusions shimmer spray in white linen, and I'm going to spritz that all over my paper. And that's going to make a lovely mess. So next I will add in some Avery Elle shimmer spray, because you cannot have enough shimmer spray. And this is really going to saturate my paper and make it warp a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll set that aside and let that dry a bit. And up next we've got my little mermaids that I've already colored out, and I'm going to add some Wink of Stella to their hair. I wasn't 100% confident in my coloring abilities, and I figured I would just kind of mask it a little bit with some of this shimmer pen, or water pen, or whatever you want to call it. I find that this gives a different effect from the Stardust pens that I have by Sakura, and this Zig Wink of Stella pen is more of a water brush than an actual pen. But I find that I get a different effect between the two. Here I am going in with a Stardust pen to kind of give the mermaid's outfit and her fins a little bit of a different type of sparkly goodness to it. And once I'm done scribbling all over each of them with the pens, I'm going to go into their little tops with a yellow glazed pen by Sakura to give their tops a bit of dimension. And once I've gone with that, then I will go through their fins and add in a clear glaze pen to give their fins more dimension. I don't have this blue color in the glaze pen, so I'll have to make do with the clear. And now that that's done, I'm going to bend this out a bit, and I've got some parchment paper that I'd been working on earlier that was still rather of use to me, and I'm just going to take a bunch of glue and glue it around the backside of this die, so that way I can adhere it to my card panel. And this is going to take some time, so I'm going to try and skip through so you don't have to watch me put glue all over the place. It's kind of like watching paint dry. So once I've got that down, I'm going to flip this over onto the big shimmery blue mess that I made on my paper, and I'll take a stamping block to kind of help me push all that down and adhere that to the paper. And this will give me my card panel to work off of once everything is nice and dry. So now that I've got that set off to the side with some stamping blocks, it's time to work on my sentiment for the front of the card. And here I am using Lawn Fawn's Dunna Flip Flop stamp greeting from one of the Flip Flop sharks, and I'm going to arrange that to how I see fit to fit into that banner die. And that banner die is from the Double Slider Surprise set. I don't have a set of banner dies, so I have to make do with what I have. And I'm going to stamp that out in some Cobalt ink, Archival ink. I really like this blue for ink stamping. And I don't find that I use a lot of blue inks, so it was kind of nice to be able to use this. So once I've inked that out, I'm going to put some Versamark ink over top of it, and I'm going to heat emboss it with some clear heat embossing powder also. So I have a little more dimension on the banner. And again, I'm taking that Recollections clear embossing powder and just sprinkling it on the top and dumping it back in. And this is that Shimmer cardstock that I was mentioning earlier. That's got a different finish on it. This will have a nice little shimmer to it for the banner die, or for the banner sentiment that I'm going to put on the front of the die, on the card. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? So I'm just positioning that on the paper, and I've cut it out, and now I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to it. Whatever was left on my blending brush, I'm just kind of adding to it. And now I'm going to take this B69 alcohol marker, Copic sketch marker, I should say. And I'm going to go around the edges of the banner die cut out. And to take it one step further, I figured I would stick it back into the negative piece and color around it to get a better idea of my border, because it's easier to color this way than to just kind of hold it and eyeball it. Now that I'm happy with that, I've gone ahead and cut out a second piece of the banner die, and I'm going to adhere that to the back of the Have a Fantastic Day sentiment for the front of my card, just to kind of give it that little extra dimension so it doesn't look so plain on the front of my busy card. And once I've got that glued down, I am going to put a block on it and set that off to the side. And now to give my little mermaids a little bit of dimension. Here I'm just taking some foam tape squares that I have. I got these ones again from the dollar store because for some reason they have a lot of interesting stuff at the dollar store. So if you haven't checked out your dollar store, check out your dollar store. You'd be surprised what you could find there. And I'm just cutting little bits and pieces to kind of go in to the shape of a mermaid on the backside to be able to prop them all up. And while we're on the subject of foam tape, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the backside of my banner cut with my sentiment on it, just to kind of give that just as much dimension as the mermaids, because those will be my focal point to my busy card. And this is where I bring in my little T-square ruler to get an idea of where I want to put the banner on my card. I'm trying to go for the center of the card, so I thought I'd use my T-square ruler to kind of give me a hand with that. And just in case I make an oops, I'm going to add some glue to the back side of my card here, or my cutout here, to give me leeway in case I don't get it on the first try. So I'm just going to use my T-square ruler and measure that out and try to get it centered. And then I'll just mash that down to hold that in place. And then next I'll add in my little mermaids. And I will repeat the same process with gluing the back sides of them and adhering them to the card base. I find that the glue in conjunction with the sticky backs of the foam really kind of give that extra stability to a bumpy surface, like the bumpy surface that I'm working with. And now with everything glued down to my card panel, I'm going to take a card base and add some double-sided tape runner to it. And I will use my Misty to line everything up so I can get an even layout with my card base and it's not wonky or askew. So here you have it. With a few embellishments for bubbles, I have a completed card, and I hope you liked it. So if you've enjoyed today's content or found it inspiring, please give this video a like. I also welcome you to subscribe, as I post videos weekly. Here's another video I think you may enjoy. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Take care.